If you could give a round of applause to the Rochester Police Department for being here with us tonight.
Mark Peterson. Good evening, my name is Mark. I'm with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I'm going to start off this evening just talking about an overview of online safety. Our involvement in the community is also working with the Rochester Police Department in proactive and reactive investigations involving online safety. So this evening I'm going to talk a little bit about an overview of online safety, about some applications that you can be aware of, and also to give some information out to the parents in the room or educators that may be in the room of how to proceed forward if you run into an instance in which a child is on an application, how you can get more information about it, and to actually determine whether or not the application may be safe for that child to use. So just as a self-assessment here, how many in the room have access to technology, whether computer, cell phone, anything like that, just by a show of hands? So many of the people in the room, either by home, school, work, whatever it may be, a lot of us have access to computers. How many use social media applications such as Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, for example? Show of hands, quite a few. How many have attended training and education on responsible use of this technology, though? So a few, and that's getting much better over the years. And that's kind of the idea of what we want to do is partnering with the Rochester Police Department is actually doing community outreach and actually education on the safe responsibility of technology. But some questions that I'm asking back on to the people that are in this room as educators and parents in the room is, do we know what our children are doing online? An overwhelming amount of response from parents and educators is we truly don't. Who are they talking to? Have they ever met someone they don't know? Did they ever meet them in person? Have we discussed the dangers of the appropriate use of internet or technology with the child? How many friends does your child have on social media profile? It's not uncommon now that a lot of our teenagers or our children, even adults, will have 600 and 700 friends on Facebook. But do they know each one of those people? And commonly they don't. Do we have the necessary knowledge to answer the questions? And that's kind of the point of my presentation this evening, is to give you some information and some resources that may be available to you to understand a little bit more about applications. Do you know what applications your children may be downloading? And is it safe for kids? The same applications that we're downloading as adults to communicate back and forth with other adults, is that safe for our children to use? What information is your child putting out there about themselves that may be on the internet? And this is one thing that I always tell students and educators and other people in the community, is that once we put this information out there, we can't retract it back. So for example, in an investigation that may involve sexting, if there are explicit images sent back and forth between two people, a lot of times we have to tell those parents that we can't take those images back. The same things that inappropriate posts, whether it may be a cyberbullying case, those posts may not be able to be retracted. And as a parent or educator, mostly as a parent here, could we access their account if we needed to? And in many instances, parents, we give a lot of technology and a lot of responsibility to our children, but we don't teach them the appropriate use of technology. These are very powerful machines. Essentially, a cell phone is a computer anymore. We do a lot of teaching and education as for driver's ed, but cell phones and computers and technology have a lot of different consequences, advantages and disadvantages of using them. So I'm going to transition in here talking about the digital footprint. Does anybody know what a digital footprint is? Maybe you've heard of the term. It's becoming more popular, and what it is essentially is, as a parent, if we start posting pictures of our children online, we've initiated or started their online digital footprint. Sometimes that can be negative, sometimes that can be positive. But as children, and the one thing that we need to stress to our children is your digital footprint has a lot of different advantages and disadvantages to you. It's always good to put positive information out there, but unfortunately, on the other way back, is that we have a lot of negative information being put out there. Some different things that can happen by negative information, whether it's inappropriate posts, can be discipline at school, college repercussions. A lot of college recruiters, if it's a competitive college, may seek out the online profile or any type of inappropriate posts, whether it may be images that were put out there to decide whether or not they're going to have that student as a respective attendee at their college. Employment. This is becoming more popular now in specifically the private sector, where employers are now looking at the digital footprint of our children as an adult. Social impacts. Inappropriate posts can have long impacting consequences, and in many instances negative. And ultimately criminal and civil. And hopefully through education, we're not getting down to that bottom portion here, but ultimately it can lead into criminal or civil repercussions. Common electronics, though, we may see in the home. We would typically think of cell phones and computers now, but a lot of times our children are using the e-readers, they're using the iPods, the Amazon Kindles, whatever it may be, different types of electronics that we would not normally think to access or communicate on the internet. So for example, let's say it's an MP3 player, such as an iPod. They may have the ability to download applications, actually make outbound phone calls from the iPod. They may actually be able to communicate by text messaging with other people. Those are things as parents, if we don't know a lot about that technology and we go purchase that for them or they receive that, again, how much do we know about that? Transitioning now into the future, one thing that we're starting to see are wearable devices. And when I say wearable, is the iWatches and the other different types of technology that's out there about remoting, whether it connects by Bluetooth. So it necessarily doesn't have to be a cell phone that we see right in front of our face. PlayStations and Xboxes, again, a lot of times we will excuse those as potential possibilities for our children to be solicited online. However, PlayStations and Xboxes are a portion of that where also teenagers are using to communicate back and forth in chat rooms. So technology, we talked a little bit about technology, what types are out there. Some different things that we see out there, a negative side of the technology. Sexual solicitation of our children. This is an ongoing problem, and as technology advances and the more applications, which we'll discuss here in a future slides, this is becoming unfortunately more popular. Sexting, and I think the Rochester Police Department is going to be covering a little bit more of that in depth. Cyberbullying, again, the same type of thing is that 15, 20 years ago, before a lot of this technology around, we may have had bullying, but now it doesn't stop. When children are leaving the schools, it follows them home, and children are using all kinds of different applications to make this bullying, if you were to say, much worse than it ever had been. Online threats, whether that may be any type of threats to other students at the schools, inappropriate posts. Financial exploitation, and what I mean by that is also the fact that we do have people that are online that are trying to get financial information, and one way of source to do that is through our children. Where do you live? Hey, does your parent have a credit card? Do you have a phone number? What information can we get? In a previous slide, I talked about what do we know about what our children put online. Unfortunately, from doing a lot of different community education outreach programs, is that we don't know a lot about what our children are putting online, which is unfortunate. Sometimes they may put out their favorite books, and they may put out their favorite music, and how people are using that online is to build a rapport with your child. If they don't know who they're communicating with, they'll use that information, build a rapport with them to try to get information back out of them. And ultimately, we're starting to see now where our teenagers are using different applications and technology to also purchase, transfer, and sell illicit substances such as drugs. We need to learn their language, and that's one thing that we're a little bit behind is, for example, LOL, and I kind of started out some of these as pretty basic, so we would say laughed out loud. But if you're looking at your child's device, we may look at it and go, I don't even know what they're saying anymore. And one thing I would recommend is that if you don't know what they're communicating back and forth with emojis and the different things that are out there, is go ahead and use whatever internet search you may find to be beneficial, and go ahead and search and see what it is. LMK, let me know. Will you call me, WYCM? PIR, parents in the room. WTTP, want to trade pictures. DOC, drug of choice. So you can see, this is not a language. If we would pick up that phone, we would go, what does that mean? But by doing a little different research, we actually understand that we're communicating. And these are teenagers that are doing this, and probably a majority of the room is that we didn't grow up with technology from the day that we were born, but we're starting to see now that our parents now, our younger parents, They grew up with technology when they were very, very small. So as adults, they're a little bit more familiar with it. With the older generations that still have children that are teenagers, we had to accustom to this technology as we grew along. There's millions of applications in the Google Play Store and Apple App Store. So I'm going to have a couple slides here. I'm going to briefly go through the apps that are available out there. This is by any means, this could be a couple hour, if not a day-long course on the applications themselves. But I want you to understand is that there's millions of applications out there. Many of them have, again, good advantages to use, but there's a lot of different negative things that are coming out of these applications. But some common buzzwords with applications that we may be seeing out there is secure, hiding, destruction, safe. And when I hear of the word destruction, can anybody think of an application or applications that may be out there that are advertising that? Can you think of one?
One of my friends has an app that hides other apps that she has on her phone.
Yeah, absolutely. There are apps out there that will hide other apps, and I do have some slides on that as well to be out there. So it's not just the common one where we pick up the technology and you're hearing what I'm saying, and you're like, as proactively as parents and educators, we want to make sure we understand what our children are doing, so we pick it up. But unfortunately, there are applications to hide those applications. So I'm going to get into some of the basic ones here, and the ones who are not familiar with it. Again, I just took a little bit of information about it. This is not supposed to be every feature of what these applications have by any means. But for example, Tinder, it's swipe, match, chat, and date. The idea is that our children may be putting their pictures out there. And to understand is that many of these applications have restrictions on age limits. So they're saying at a minimum, you must be, for example, the age of 13. Some of them have 18, but as you may think, is that our children may use a different online persona as they do in real life, and they may falsify their age to get access to these applications. Tumblr, post photos, text, videos, and audio. Kik messaging, there's messaging, videos, sketching. Some of these applications, specifically the Kik one that are out there, is very popular out there. You can also have group chat with other people. Whisper is again gaining more popularity. The idea with that is chat. And a lot of these applications out there is the anonymity. I don't have to tell them who I am. I can create an online persona. It doesn't even have to be who I am. I can use actually other photos of other people in my school. And you can kind of start to see where that kind of goes down the road of some of the cyberbullying that can occur during some of these instances. Twitter, send tweets, share, reply to tweets, photos, and videos. Snapchat, photos, text, videos, and calls, audio and video. Some of these applications, you don't have to, when you get into these applications, they don't have a way for you to meet other people. So for example, sometimes our children are going out onto the internet, onto broader chat rooms, and people that may try to solicit our children, for example, may say, why don't you switch to this platform? And the platform may be one of these applications. So Facebook, and many of the people in the room may have Facebook. Again, there's advantages and disadvantages of it, but we have the messaging, posting, and sharing photos options with Facebook. Instagram, we can post and share photos and videos. Meet Me, again, is another upcoming application that's kind of popular. Again, it's video and text chat, send pictures, often referred to as a way for people to meet, to build relationships. Scout, again, chat and share photos. You can kind of start to see a little bit common theme between these. Photos and videos, photos and videos. And I kind of go back to the first time that I was talking about some of these applications, is that we can't retract these. Once they're out there typically forever. This top one here, the yellow, we probably, if we looked at that, it was formerly called yellow. But if we see that on a cell phone or a computer, would we go, what is that? Do we even know? Again, you can create live video rooms, up to 9 friends to chat back and forth. You can use Skype, video and voice chat. Some of these, as adults, you may have on your phones as well. Pal Talk, free text, voice, and video chat. So I talked a little bit earlier about an iPod, or another instance of where people, specifically children, can take iPods, MP3 players, and make them into cellular, if you were to say, type of devices where they can make outbound and receive phone calls in. And as a parent, You may be upstairs and not understand that at 2 o'clock in the morning, your child may be communicating with somebody that's within the school that they know. They may be communicating with somebody across the world. Ask FM. This is the ability for a child to post questions out there and actually have responses put back on there. Also, the child can respond to questions that may be on the application. The burner application, very similar to Snapchat. The idea is that we send the text message, or we send the message, we send the information, whether a photo or video, and it self-destructs. And that's kind of where a lot of these applications are trying to gain the popularity, specifically with our children, is they're saying, hey, don't worry, you can send it out, and then it will self-destruct. In most instances, though, for the parents that are in the room, that's not necessarily truly what occurs. Text now, again, the voice calls and text picture. Dropbox is gaining popularity with our youth to share, whether it may be audio files, video files, pictures as well. Do you have a question?
When you were talking about a destruction app, would Burner qualify as a destruction app?
Yes. So the question was, is like burner, would it qualify? And more when I say qualify is when I'm talking about just some of the features of the burner application is that they advertise the fact of it as like the self-destruction of the messages. After a certain period of time, for example, a snap may self-destruct or a message may self-destruct. So that would be one feature if you're to say of the burner app. The one thing that, can anybody think about on Snapchat or some of those other applications that they say they self-destruct? If I'm a child and I send a picture out to another child in the school, what could the other child do? Screenshot, absolutely. And so that's another reason why these are just, they never self-destruct. And there are applications where the original sender may be notified that somebody screenshotted it, but again, that is too late at that point in time. Google Voice, I talked about voice calls, messaging, and voicemail. So again, don't get in the habit of that. Since my child doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't mean that they may not be at risk of some of these dangers that are on the internet, specifically online. These can be used on all kinds of different platforms, whether it may be an iPod, MP3 player, or any type of those type devices. So what can we look for as parents? One thing that you may see that are kind of consistent in a lot of these cases is that the children are turning off the screen and they hide the device. May seem more common, but think about what I just talked about is that they may keep their cell phone out there, but they might hide their iPod, they might hide their MP3 player, whatever it may be. Change in habits and routine. And unfortunately, in many of these instances, by the time that, for example, I may be involved in the investigation, is that there's a common occurrence between the parents as they said, we saw the changes in the habits, but we didn't think to act on it. And that's what I'd say, trust your gut instinct, is be proactive on these, be involved in what your children are doing online. Changes in grades and attendance, again, that's going to be more of a long-term type of thing possibly, but certainly attendance would be something to be note of. So as parents in the room, if your educators in your school district and the Rochester school system is saying that your child is skipping school, there's maybe inappropriate behavior in the school, take some of that into a possibly alarm. There might be actually more going on here. Isolation or withdrawn from friends or family. If your child has a different set of friends, I'm not saying that every single time that this is what's occurring, but just take note of that. What else is going on? How much data is your child using on the cell phone? If you see a spike in the data, that's one common occurrence. Specifically, if you're using your Wi-Fi at home, you might not notice that. But what are some options that we would have in the home for parents for the Wi-Fi? What could we do? Any thoughts? Turn it off at night, absolutely. So establish some guidelines and some rules. So what can we do though? Let's start with the first initiated thing is to do some research on the devices that we're putting in the hands of our teenagers and our youth. These are very powerful devices that we use as adults to communicate back and forth. And your children, unknowing to them, again, they're relying on us to guide them through their stages of life. They not understand maybe the risks of all the dangers of the electronics. Establish guidelines with your child. It's not uncommon is that parents say, I maybe gave my 10-year-old, I gave my 10-year-old a cell phone, but after that, I didn't know what occurred. I didn't understand what they did, who they communicated with. I didn't put any restrictions on them. Posting of videos, again, can circulate for a very long time. Nothing is private online. Look at your child's phone. do inspections on it. And when I say inspections, more or less is have a communication and relationship with your child to say, I want you to maybe have the technology out there. But there has to be some guidelines. Some other common occurrences is that parents may not know their child's passwords or passcodes on their particular devices. And if this is a situation that you may be sitting here in the crowd, is that I hope these are some things that you can help generate some positive talks with your child after this presentation. Beware of spoofing apps such as the calculator, flashlight, and Vault, and other applications that may try to hide applications that may be used by children to communicate with other people. I'll have some pictures just to show you as an example here following the slide. Talk and educate your child as a safe use of technology. So some other options that you can do is self-provider carrier restrictions on there. Some carriers may offer the opportunity to block certain numbers, allow certain numbers, actually shut off the cellular capability of that cell phone after a particular time in the evening. Unfortunately, a lot of times that when I may be interviewing people in the investigations by the time I may be involved, is that a lot of these times they're happening between the times that the parents are going to bed and the parents think their children are going to bed as well. So for example, between the hours of 10 o'clock and maybe 6 a.m., your children may be never sleeping. They may be online communicating. You can purchase software to possibly monitor the activity. Another option is that many of your home routers that you may be purchasing out there may have the availability to actually turn off the internet onto particular devices at certain times of the day. So there's a lot of free options that are out there that doesn't cost money for the parents in the room. Some devices may have an admin account, and I'd always recommend as a parent is create an admin account and establish those guidelines with your child and say, I may want to look at your stuff, and the idea is that we can have a good relationship. I can look at your things, but I can also help you keep you safe. Another option is to add your fingerprint on their device. If they have the biometric unlock enabled, as a parent, put your fingerprint on there. So if your child refuses to provide the passcode to you and you think there may be something that you need to look into, add your fingerprint. So this is just an example up here. Not necessarily anything about this particular app, but I just want to show you, for example, these are some things that you can search on the Google Play Store out there to see what type of applications that are out there to hide some of the applications. If you're not familiar with an application, some different resources I have on a slide coming up of how you can research them to see if they're safe. But the advantage of this one here is it's called the Vault. It'll hide and secure your photos and videos, look secure and backup. So let's say you've done a very proactive job and you've created that relationship with your child and you're saying, I'm gonna look at the devices. And you go in there and you don't see anything. Just be aware that these applications may be out there. Calculator app, it functions, it works just as a calculator, but on the back side, what it's doing is it's actually securing and hiding photos that may be on the cell phone. So those are some different things that may be out there as a parent just to be aware of. Unfortunately, is that our children are very, to some extent, more tech savvy. Some different resources out there. The one thing I would like to really focus on the resources is the NetSmarts website. And I think that the next presenter is also going to be talking about NetSmarts. It's a free resource that's out there. And what that advantage is that they have videos, they have handouts as parents. They also have different tips as parents that you can look at to try to build those relationships with your children. Different things that you can put into place to help provide either blocking the internet at odd times where your child would maybe need to have access. And also different handouts like this. It talks about protecting your kids' online social media, what accounts, settings are being used, and different type of general tips that I've talked about this evening. So with that in mind, I thank you for your time, and I'm going to hand the presentation over to Officer Marks.
It won't take long to cycle through it. Yeah, so if you just want to run the presentation. Is this on? Is it working? Yep. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me okay? So I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Greg Marks. I'm the liaison officer at John Marshall High School. Just quick introductions. Obviously, Mark Peterson with BCA is up here. Pat Kelly, who's a liaison at Mayo High School. Dan Stensgaard, who is a liaison at Phoenix Academy and ALC. Julie Clayman is a liaison at Century High School. Sergeant Chris Lowry is in charge of our unit. And then Captain John Sherwin with the police department as well. So just quickly, what we went through, this is a presentation that we started last year and had started to give to all the schools. So we just kind of go through, and this is very simple. We just give the definition. These are what we give to the students. This is a definition of Merriam-Webster of sexting. We tell the kids, that's what it says. So then we move into the risks. You sent a sext, now what? So we tell the kids to report it. Tell somebody when you do it, and we can start to work to try and handle it the best we can. Obviously, if it's out there, it's out there. Like Mark touched on, once it's out there, we have a real tough time stopping it from being out there. Get support. Friends are support, staff is support, parents are support. Talk to people. We tell the kids to open up, admit that what they did, and we will help them through that. Don't give up. What we tell them is don't give up by just saying it's out there and I can't do anything about it. We will do whatever we can inside our capacity as the Rochester Police Department to make sure that people don't use that and re-victimize these children over and over again. Obviously, we can only do so much because it's out there on the internet, but we try to do the best we can at our level. These are just the statutes. We tell the kids, this is what you could face if you send non-consensual images of someone else. This is fresh from the county attorney's office. One of the things kids say, I'm not sending picture files, just snaps. Pictures available for 5 seconds usually. Person receiving the image file has many options like Mark touched on. Capture the image, we can screenshot it, they can save it. The best way is to just not send those pictures at all. If their children possess this stuff, this is what our county attorney wanted us to really get out there. Summary forfeiture of that device is likely. And that means that that phone is gone. So if you as parents spent $700 on an iPhone, it now belongs to the city of Rochester because of that images that are on it. So short and sweet, that's where we're at on that presentation. These are the files and some of the resources that we have. And a lot of them are the same that Mark presented to. The NetSmarts, the state legislature, and then the cyber tip line stuff. So this is another popular thing that we're starting to see now. Vaporizers, electronic delivery devices is what the statutory term is. So vapes, that type of thing. This is a presentation that I created for John Marshall, and I present this to our John Marshall students with our chemical dependency counselor. We're doing those presentations starting in 2 weeks to all 9th and 10th graders at JM. The other liaisons are going to have the same opportunity to use it at their schools as well. Very quickly, very briefly, statutory definition, I'm not going to read it. It's just basically a vape. Everybody has seen them. You know what they are. Possible penalties. It is illegal for anybody under the age of 18 to possess a vape. It's a common misconception that we see. If you're under 18, you cannot have a vape. It doesn't matter whether there's nicotine in it or not. The statute says that you are not allowed to have it, which is the possession under 18. If you buy it and give it to a minor, where some 18-year-old kid might buy it, give it to the other kids, that's the furnishing. First time misdemeanor possibility, second time gross misdemeanor possibility. These are pictures of vape devices. We've kind of all seen them. We have some here. The pipe on the end is actually a vape. It's not a true traditional pipe. This is the newest one, and this is the most important one for you guys to pay attention to. Everybody has USB drives the little flash drives. This is kind of the size. This is just one of our flash drives that we have. This device is about this size. It looks like a flash drive. In the end, I don't know if the pointer works. In the end, where the color-coded end is, up on the top of that, that's the liquid. It's charged with a little USB drive. You can plug it into the side of a computer, plug it right in, it'll charge. You can see it in school. The biggest thing with this that kids are doing is, and what we've seen is, or what I've heard of is, these aromas and scents with these match up very similar to lotions that you might buy your kids at some of the stores in town. So the kids will buy these, and then they'll buy the same smelling lotion or similar smelling lotion, and they'll tell the teachers, no, that's just my lotion. And they'll use them in the middle of class. In the wintertime, it's real easy. The plume of smoke isn't very big. They can just blow it into their shirt sleeve, and it'll just suck into their shirt sleeve. So if you see this stuff at home, you might want to check in and make sure that's not one of those devices. These are just some of the things that they have. These are the THC brands, but they're just all sorts of like candy names, desserts, fruit flavors. Health concerns. A lot of these vapes have formaldehyde chemicals in them. Everybody knows what those are for. Some of the other stuff that is on here, I mean, it's not a safe alternative to smoking at all. There's still health concerns that go along with it. Even if there is no nicotine in the product, it's still not a safe alternative. Parents need to know, this was just pulled from the internet. They're concerned, there's no real long-term studies. They're so new, there's no real long-term studies at this point. Everybody's trying to study them. There's no long-term studies at this point to really find out exactly what the long-term consequences are. So again, the biggest thing is go out, educate, and find out for yourselves. And that's my contact information. You can close out of that. We'll have devices up here afterwards if you guys want to take a look at what they are too. So.
Thank you. Let's give these guys a hand. I've had the privilege, I'll say, to work in 2 other states and a few other districts. And the partnership we have with the Rochester Police Department is amazing. It's a great partnership. We work very well together, and it's in a partnership that we are really glad that we have. So we're thank them for coming in. We're going to quickly zip through our part so we can get to the questions. See if I can get this to work. You probably heard me say that many times the safety of our student staff is our top priority. That's something that we take very seriously, and we do everything we can to make sure that our students and staff are safe. Over the few years, we've taken a lot of we've done a lot of things to try to make our facilities safer, and we've done some training with our staff. So we're going to try to zip through this real quick to kind of show you what we've done. If you have a elementary or middle school student, you're well aware a few years ago, we put in a buzzer system. And most of our sites, when you get through the buzzer system, the only place you can go is into the office. We have a few buildings that aren't quite there yet, but they're on our schedule to convert their office location and get it so that it's a secure safety. That's a secure entrance. We have fob entrances. All of our employees have a little fob that they have to use to get in and out of buildings. And not only does it get them in and out of buildings, but it logs who fobbed in and what time and what building they fobbed in. So that's good for ours. We have a Raptor system. Once again, if you visit any of our schools, you have to go through, you give an ID, they run it through the system, then you get your visitor's badge, and off you go. So that's something that we put in as well. We have panic buttons. All our office sites have a panic button that immediately notifies the police department. So if there's a situation that we need to contact them immediately, we have a panic button, and it goes right, I think, to dispatch. Is that right, Scott? Okay. Okay. Talked about secure entrance, fobs. You want to talk about this stuff, Scott?
Sure. My name is Scott Sheard, and I'm the Executive Director of Operations. And just to highlight, you have these outline of what we're talking about right on your table. But just a brief overview, the surveillance cameras, security lighting, these are all things that we've been working on. The crisis communication plan is one of the more critical pieces of it. That's updated annually by each site, and I have an in-house warehouse of where I review them, and then I work with the sites in order to get them up and running. And they're mandated per policy to review them on an annual basis and work with their staff at sites. And then state statute requires that we do at least 5 lockdown drills, 5 fire alarms, and 1 tornado drill every year as well. And we log those, and we keep a log of that as well. Of course, we have the security alarm systems on all the buildings, fire alarms. All the buses that students ride have video system. Most of our vans have them as well. You want to move ahead? I'm sorry. And some of the stuff we're working on, we've recently met with the student governments at all 3 high schools. We're looking for ways to enhance the security at the high schools as well. As you know, the high school entrances, because they have an open campus, they have open doors, particularly at the front doors. And even though we have the Raptor management system at the high school as well, there is that freedom to come and go out of the building by the students. And so we're looking for ways of getting their input to see what they would support for us to lock down the high school a little, make it a little more secure, and try to monitor who comes in and out of the high schools. We also are looking at security glass film that you can put over entrance doors, classroom doors, and also hardened for the doors and lock systems as well. These aren't bulletproof types things. What we're trying to buy here is time. If we can increase the amount of time it takes for someone to breach a window, to reach around and unlock a door, or to breach a door to get in and unlock it, that helps us because then they get there. Most events are over 4 to 6 minutes. If you're talking an active shooter event, their average response time, I don't know what it is these days, 2 minutes, 50 seconds on a 911 call. That's what it was when I was on the police department, but it's probably better now. But we want to build time, and so we're working on ways to enhance that. All of this costs money, of course, and we're looking for ways to fund this. The legislature's working on bills that will allow us to use some of our long-term facility maintenance revenue funds in order to apply that to school security. Right now, we aren't allowed to do that per state statute, but if that statute gets changed by the legislature in Minnesota and allows us to do that, then that's what we're going to do. So, but one quick piece of this whole thing, the whole key to the safety and security of the buildings, one of the biggest keys that we don't talk about very often is the intelligence piece. And that comes from the people in this room, the students, and the people up here. You know what the failures were down in Parkland. You understand. You hear it on the news about, well, they knew about this guy. They never did anything with that. They do. We have information. We have resources within the school district that we apply. We have a long list of resources that we use. We do threat assessments. We have staff on the school district, and if it reaches a level where it requires police intervention, they exhaust all means necessary to make sure that the schools stay safe. I can't say enough good things about the liaisons that we have here, because they do an absolutely amazing job. Very dedicated to what they do to keep these schools safe. And I feel very lucky that in our school system that we have here, that we have all these resources in place. It's really amazing. So,
Yeah, I just briefly touched a little bit upon the staff development. A few years ago, we worked with Educator School Safety Network. I think they're out of Ohio. And we did training on buzzer training, so those individuals that monitor the buzzer and the computer, they're trained on what kind of questions to ask and what they should look for as individuals come to the office. We trained our schools on parent unification. For some reason, we have to get out of a building rather quickly. How do we connect parents to their children? So we've done that type of training. We've done threat assessment, and that's kind of what Scott is talking about. Majority of the school shootings, there was afterwards, people said, well, he said this in my classroom. And another person said, well, he did this, and it was kind of weird. But what happens is all of those pieces of puzzles don't get put together to understand, ooh, we have a child at risk here. We need to do something. So we have a threat assessment protocol that they use so we can communicate. If there's something unusual, people know about it. We may not act on it right there, but if we keep hearing things like that about the same individual, then we know we need to look a little bit further. Visitor engagement. We trained our staff in if somebody's in the building and they don't have a visitor's badge on, how to respectfully engage with them and get them back to the office where they belong and to get a badge. Okay, so we did that training. And then obviously we did a lot of training in active shooter. I will say that we probably put in best practice before most districts across the country did. Years ago, it was let's hunker down and hope for the best. The training we started about 3 or 4 years ago, if you can identify where the shooter is and if you're not close, get out of here. Get out of the building. So we trained that before it became popular with most other districts. So that's real quickly the training we've done. And that's on there. Scott talked about things that we're looking at. You know, it's really a challenge you want your buildings to be welcoming, but you want them to be safe. And it's a fine line. We don't want to turn this into our schools into prisons where it's hard to get in and out, but we also want to make sure people are safe. So these are things that we're looking at, and we're constantly looking for not only facility changes, but for best practice in making people safe. Okay, so now I think Amy has the questions for all of us up here, and just jump in whenever whoever wants to answer the question. Do we have you know what, not you. I'll take mine off.
So we have a few questions that have come in through the Padlet online, but feel free if you have more, just wave your cards and staff will be around to pick those up. So the first one is a pretty quick one, I think, but what hour are the police liaisons on campus?
Yes. Their day is basically scheduled for 8.4 hours, 7 o'clock in the morning to 3:25. But we can also move those around a little bit as well, but they put in 8.4 and typically that's the time they're there.
All right, this next one is talking about the buzzer system, and the original intent of that was to be aware of who was coming and going in the buildings so that we could track folks. The question is, some schools buzz people right in. What kinds of training are we continuing to provide? And this might be a Mr. Sheridan or Mr. Munoz on the buzzers.
Thank you, Amy. And the question, is there a more specific piece of that question, Amy? Well, we just happened, we had a PD training day where we retrained all the clerical staff and all the office managers on the Raptor system, which is part of that buzzer system. As you may know, like the superintendent said, if you come to an elementary school and you buzz the door, there is a camera up there is on the view of the person that's running that buzzer system. They can see who that person is. It's a very high definition camera, and there's also another camera on there on the to give a facial recognition piece of it as well. So they can see whoever is out there and make the determination whether or not to buzz them in. But once they buzz them in, we're working on the secure entrance piece. We still have a few schools left, but right now the idea eventually is to have where you come in, where you're buzzed in, and the only way to get into the school then is to go through the office. The face-to-face contact is the critical element here that's required. You would do the Raptor system, you'd provide your name, They run you through the Raptor system, which runs you through the national database for sex offenders. They print out an ID badge for you, and then you have an ID badge, and it keeps track of how long you're there and sign you out when you go out. But like I said, we did do a training just last week. Julie Rusick, Bobby Jorgensen, and I trained all the staff. And so it's a continual process.
All right, you can hang on to that mic, I believe. Kurt hooked me up over here. So why are some classrooms practicing hide and huddle together in a corner? Does every school teach teachers a variety of ways to keep a handle on lockdowns?
For our protocol that we have, it's called run, hide, barricade. It doesn't mean you have to do those in that order. Like the superintendent mentioned, if they're in this particular building, if there's a shooting over in the G house over there, we don't expect you to follow that you barricade in here. If you can get out of the building, get out of the building. That's the safest way to go. The key there is having the wherewithal to try to understand where those sounds are coming from, where the exits are, the quickest way out of the building. There is no hard and fast rule. We could write scenarios till the day till all the cows come home in order to try to accommodate every little thing that could happen, but that's not a reasonable way. What it takes is common sense, providing them those three options, the run, hide, barricade, and make that determination, the staff members make that determination when the incident occurs.
And I would just like to add, from a police department perspective, that is a best practice that's taught nationwide. This is not something that the Rochester Public Schools have decided on their own. That's what we encourage in law enforcement. If you can get out, get out. If you have to hide, hide. Obviously, if you need to buy time, you need to do that as well. So.
All right, the next one. Are there legal penalties for sexting? If so, what age?
Go ahead.
Nobody wants it. Are there legal penalties for sexting, and if so, at what age?
Certainly, this is going to be probably a question more appropriately answered by the county attorney's office or the appropriate county attorney who may review a case. Just from speaking, is that the first most important thing as law enforcement, as our role is in there, is education. Our role is not to build a criminal case against specifically teenagers. There are certain circumstances in which it may occur. There are penalties that can occur out there in regards to how the local attorney's office would handle it. It's really case dependent. There are some different circumstances. For example, if the communication occurred between two children, did it occur outside the communication of the two children? But ultimately, I would say it's kind of a hard question to answer, because there's every situation, every incident and investigation has certain particular points to it that have to be reviewed by the county attorney's office. So, but there are penalties potentially that could occur during that.
Thank you. And a related one, where do students obtain the vapes that you showed, the e-cigarettes, et cetera? How much are they?
It seems like we're giving way too much information.
They're going to change the allowance.
Yeah, I don't know where to get them. I would assume at some of the local stores they have them.
You can get them at any smoke shop, and
Yeah.
if you're 18, you can get them. So there is certainly a market within the high schools of older students providing them to younger students and selling them and reselling them. Vapes use what's called vape juice, and it's in a small tube, and it may look like fruit juice or candy or something like that, but it has a purpose, and it tastes fruity. The kids that are doing it, the young adults that are doing it doesn't have a negative effect. It's not like when you first smoke a cigarette and you feel like you can't breathe. It's a different kind of experience. So trust me on this. It is very, 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 very popular within the high schools. Very popular.
Yeah, and they're all over. Amazon sells them. I think we had an instance where people were buying on Amazon and reselling them at the schools. So kids were buying them on their parents' account.
Parents, just so you know, you do not have to be 18 years old to sign up for a post office box. Okay? Your children can go to the post office, register for a post office box, and receive items shipped to that post office box. So there are a lot of things that you need to be aware about as parents that your kids know.
to you. So we've had several questions, all related to mental health. So I'm kind of going to group them into, one question is about how students find out about mental health services. Also kind of what services do we offer? And I'm bringing Denise Moody up here to help answer this one as well. So can you talk a little bit about what's available, how kids find out about it, that kind of thing? Yep. Just don't walk away.
Coming close. Really at the school level, at the secondary level, our counselors are kind of our first line of support for our students that are struggling. So we would encourage students, if they're looking for mental health services, to really reach out to their counselor. That every secondary student is assigned a counselor, and they would be a great first resource for them. In addition to our counselors at our secondary buildings, we also have school social workers. And at all of our secondary buildings, we also have co-located school mental health therapists that are available to see students as well. So those are resources that the counselor could put you in touch with and help provide kind of a range of supports depending on what the needs are at that point. At the elementary level, if we have students that are struggling, there's kind of a variety of entry points depending on kind of how big the building is and what the resources they have available are. Certainly any of your administrators could be a support if you're worried about your student or if your student's worried about themselves. All of our elementary schools do have school social workers, and some of them, we have 5 schools next year that have school counselors, and then we do have some schools that also have school-based mental health therapists. So we kind of have a variety of different services that are available there.
And I would add to that, in the last 5 years, we've added 88 staff for mental health, anywhere from all of those that she just mentioned, we've added 88, but it's not enough. I've been in public education, I'll just say over 30 years, quite a while. And the biggest change I've seen in public education is the mental health needs of our students. And we're constantly looking for ways to partner with Rochester Public Health, all kinds of people to try to get more mental health support to our students. Just recently, the cabinet went around to the high schools and just set up camp during lunch and allowed the kids to come in and talk to us about whatever they want to do. And one of the things that I learned is that a lot of our kids aren't aware of the mental health support that we have available in the schools. So we've been talking is how can we better educate our students so they know what's available to them. So that's something that we are going to work on.
And just quickly, I know from working at the schools, all 4 of the liaisons that are assigned to the schools are what we call CIT trained. So any of your children or people that you may know that are having a mental health crisis, the officers working at the schools are trained through our crisis intervention team program to deal with the students and people during their mental health crisis. So the police department has given us that opportunity to further us and make sure that we're trying to do the right thing at the schools as well.
Thank you. We had a question on the Padlet on the definition of bullying versus assault. And I know Heather has posted the section of the district's behavior handbook that deals with that, but can anybody field that and shed any light on where those two might come together? Or?
Yeah, I'll just say, to me, the biggest thing that the definition says about bullying, it can't be a one-time incident. It's going to be an ongoing, for example, I used to be an elementary principal, and out of recess, Johnny calls Billy a name. So he comes in and says, Billy's bullying me. Well, no, that's not bullying, but it's not behavior we want. But it has to be an ongoing behavior. It's probably the biggest determiner, whereas assault will be a kid just goes after another kid for who knows what reasons, from you stole my girlfriend to you said something about my girlfriend to who knows a variety of reasons. That would not be considered bullying because it's not an ongoing kind of a pestering thing. But our district policy has a really great definition of what bullying, and I would say that that's probably a term that gets misused a lot. Yes, there's behavior going on that not good for your child, but it's probably not bullying, but we still need to address it. So to me, the determiners it can't be just a one-time thing. It's going to have to be an ongoing type of behavior.
All right, a question on why do some middle schools and high schools share an officer?
Well, unfortunately, things come down to dollars. And since I've been here, we have never really had a middle school liaison officer. I think when I first got here, the supervisor of liaisons was housed at one of our middle schools. So we really, what we started doing in the third quarter is having the high schools spend some time at their feeder middle school. And we'll continue that through this year. We are, at least we put in our budget for next year an additional officer to help with the middle schools. Now we have to wait and see if the city can get that in their budget. But that's something that we have built in our budget because we see the great work that these people do, and we want to get that in our middle schools and provide support. You hear a lot about you read in the paper, they may deal with stuff that there's actually charges filed, but they do so much building relationships and working with kids that's very positive. And that's something that tends to get missed a lot, and that's a really valuable piece of information, and all of these individuals are really good at doing that. So they do a lot for us, and we're hoping that we can at least add another one for next year if it works out with the city budget.
Correct, and that's the issue normally. It's not that we don't want to provide additional officers in the middle schools. I think there's a lot of return value on that. However, new positions cost money, and when the city police department, we are funded by the tax levy, and when you're looking at increasing tax levies, there's an appetite of the political side that is not in favor for that. So it's just a reality that we deal with. I think even though all of our liaisons have middle school responsibility, and they split their time between the middle schools within the city. So it's not like they're without, it's just a shared arrangement.
All right, just a reminder, if you are on a time crunch and you need to secure your children from childcare, feel free at whatever point you need to grab them. We're going to go for another 5 minutes or so with questions. All the questions, regardless of whether they got answered right here, will be answered in an FAQ online. So we'll make sure we get all of them up on the website and out for you to see, along with those links to different resources. So, yep, go ahead.
I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I sit here and listening to this stuff, and I'm thinking, thank goodness my kids are grown, and I didn't have to deal with social media stuff when they were growing up. I don't know if I'd survive, to be honest with you. It's hard work being parents nowadays with everything that's out there. So thank you for coming tonight and be willing to listen and learn what's out there. And so I wanted to throw that in before some of them based on.
Sounds good. This next one from the Padlet, students who've been, are there resources for students who've been sexually assaulted or solicited, and where would they go?
Yes, through the police department, certainly we work hand in hand with Olmsted County Victim Services. One of our primary functions when we have a sexual assault victim, no matter the age, is making sure they have the support. And obviously that is the job of victim services, and literally every day we interact with victim services and are getting victims resources. So any report to law enforcement, and you don't have to report, when you're a victim, you don't have to make a report to law enforcement to actually utilize victim services. So that's the best resource locally.
Thank you. Question on the online history, I think, for you. What's the most effective way to view your child's activity history for different applications?
Now with kids with the different types of technology that's out there, they're becoming more popular or more knowledgeable on how to delete their history. So there's a couple of different things. There's not one quick, fast rule. The one thing that I would tell you as parents is that there is software. Certainly I can't endorse a particular type of software, but I would say just use whatever search engine you may find beneficial to you, and go out there and look for software as a parent that you can put on your child's device. And what that'll help you to do if your child does try to delete internet activity or delete text messages and those types of things, it may allow you, depending on the certain type of software, to go back and look at the internet history. I would like to give you a hard, fast rule, but there's so many different types of technology that's out there, whether it's a computer or a cell phone. My best recommendation is that try to look at potentially some software to help do that as well.
And while you're up there, one of the questions was, where can parents learn more about this if they're not tech savvy to begin with? So can you reinforce maybe some of those good spots to go?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the websites beneficial for parents to look at as resources, besides the Rochester Police Department, a great resource, is NetSmarts. And I think if we have the website up there, we can also put it up there for everybody to look at as well. I think the big misspelling there, though, it is with a Z and not an S, but I would recommend that website. What it's an advantage to is that this is information that's out there for law enforcement, educators, and also parents, and information that you can give to your child that would be age-appropriate based content. So for example, if your child is in high school, they can watch a video that would be appropriate to them. If your child's in middle school, it may be something that may be appropriate for that age.
Thank you. Kind of a short but important one. Are there drug dogs on campus?
Yes, we do have canines available if the need arises.
So they're not regularly on campus, but you'll bring them,
Well,
or?
we might just have some friendly four-legged visitors visit our schools here now that the weather's going to get nice. A few years ago, we did that fairly regular, both within the school and parking lots. The law does not allow us to have the dogs sniff individuals, so we typically do lockers and vehicles. We've had conversation with the police that we will probably be doing that sometime here in the near future. We typically don't announce that. We just show up and they do their thing. So we've done it in the past, and I think just because of what we're hearing here lately, that we think we need to bring them back.
And as a resource to not only the schools, but the entire city of Rochester, we do have 8 canines. 6 of them are dual purpose, which would be kind of the drug finding dogs, and then 2 of them are explosive detection dogs.
All right, the next one is the threat assessment profiles appear to be intelligence. How is it secured for privacy, and how is the knowledge shared?
Handing that one to me.
Yep.
Okay. There's this great thing called data privacy rules in the state of Minnesota, along with some federal rules that are very restrictive as far as what information can be shared. Shared with us in district, we're allowed as district staff members to share it appropriately amongst ourselves as needed. There are some limitations of what we can provide to the police, just like on their end, they're limited as well as what they can provide us. If it's a life safety issue where there's an exigency to it, then we're allowed to, there's exceptions to some of those rules that allow us to share information more readily on a life safety issue.
Okay. What can parents do to help increase funding for school building security? Mr. Munoz likes that question.
You like that?
Yeah, I think, I would encourage you to talk to your local legislators, and we do have a couple of our local legislators that have some bills in place, and I think Scott referenced one of them that will give us a little more flexibility in a couple of our funding sources. A lot of our funding is tied to specific, it can only be used certain ways, but there is a bill in there to give us a little flexibility for that. And then I do know, I think Senator Nelson has a bill in supposedly additional funding, not just giving you flexibility with your current funding, but additional funding that could be used for facility safety, mental health support, a little more broader use. So we're kind of been monitoring that and hoping that that goes through. But just talk to your local legislators and you know, as John said, it's, you know, we both wish we could have more liaison offers than we have, but you know, there's only so many dollars to go around. So any time you can talk to our local legislators to additional funding is something that would be very helpful.
So I think we'll call this our last question, but it's one that many of you may have a comment on. How can parents better partner with RPD and RPS to keep kids safe?
I want to answer this. Can you hear me? Okay. So we all know that our teenagers don't like to talk very often. They kind of come home and they do their own thing. And we usually ask the same boring question: how was lunch? And how was school today? That's kind of where we stop. We don't get the answers. So what I think for you all to do is to ask about the kids in school. Tell me about some of these kids. Tell me, you got to get them to start opening up and talking. Have them talk to you about that kid that's acting different or acting odd. Find a way to communicate with your child. And then we have the tip lines that you can call any one of the liaison officers at the school if you have. We have email addresses that you can send something to us. My daughter keeps telling me about this particular individual that she or he keeps talking about. You know, just little stuff like that. But go beyond the how was your day at school, how was sports, and you know, ask the tough questions. Because if you don't ask the tough questions, they're not going to answer at all. That's what I'd like to see.
And I would say encourage your kids to engage with us. We're a great resource for them, and we haven't really touched much tonight about mentoring kids, but we take great pride in taking care of your kids, ultimately. I mean, that's why we're doing this. And I ran into an experience where I think it was at Riverside, and there was a young man that was in there, a young boy, and I was going to shake his hand, and he completely shunned me. My mom said, "You're going to arrest me if I'm naughty." So that kind of hit me hard, and I thought, you know what? I've said this to my kids in the store when they're not behaving, and you see a cop, you know, behave, or the cop's going to arrest you. I'm asking you, do not do that, please. Okay? That's something that we really, really need with us and the kids. So you can help by just telling them to engage with us, because I'm going to pick on Maeve because she's the only one I recognize, but I hope we have and ultimately by the time she graduates or we're done with high school, that if I need help on the street, Maeve's going to step in and help me. And that's kind of what I think we're all trying to do for your kids.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to, like we said over here, is really engage and have conversations with your child and really be interested in what they're doing, who their friends are, and really encourage them that telling you about something is not, I'm an elementary principal from the old tattletelling, it's helping somebody out. And you know, even though we do have a anonymous tip line on our website, that's a good place, but those are hard for us to investigate because we don't have an individual we can go talk to get more information. But just encourage them to talk to the adults that are in the school and just have conversations with them. I know we get very busy in our lives and our kids' lives, and sometimes we don't spend the time to sit down and have dinner together and just really engage in conversation. But that's really, I think I would encourage you to do, and it will pay off in the long run.
Any other comments? All right, thank you so much for coming. We will make sure that all the questions get answered in the FAQ online, and we'll get that posted as soon as we can. I think our panelists will probably hang around for a couple of minutes if you have any follow-ups. Can we thank our panelists before you leave?